If you've been following along with our other road trip videos, you know that we have traveled far and wide through the US. And in the last video, finally landed back in Canada to some equally beautiful sights. We briskly made our way from Vancouver to Kelowna in a single snowy push. While it was beautiful, it left us a little uneasy as we lost sunlight heading into the city, into the last leg of our journey. Kelowna is in the southern part of BC, nestled in the Okanagan Valley, and on the shore of Okanagan Lake. It is also home to two of our very best friends, Daniel and Chris, which was one of the main motivators for our trip out here, and specifically this spot. We spent our first day here on a hike around Knox Mountain Park to take in some sights, get a different perspective of the area, and just catch up. We truly really didn't have any plans for this stop, and in some ways it was just a moment to take a breath from the pretty hectic schedule that we've been keeping. Being in the Okanagan, we made sure to check out some wineries and sample what the valley had to offer. Let's just say we were thirsty and happy that we had a designated driver. Where it's located, Kelowna doesn't experience the same amount of rainfall that many associate with the West Coast. However, with that said, the weather didn't cooperate all that much while we stayed here. And we spent more time indoors than we had anticipated. So we filled a lot of that time with just hanging out, a little bit more of that sweet wine, cooking, eating, and, well, yeah, going to the local climbing gym. This trip kind of ended up being like the Great Climbing Gym Tour of 2017. You can grab your tour shirt from the merch table after the show. So we weren't going to miss the opportunity to climb when it rained at this stop of the tour. I don't know if the exhaustion of almost 3 weeks of travel had started to catch up with us, or the climbing was actually stiffer here, but it kind of felt that way at Gneiss Climbing. For those of you who don't know, gneiss is a type of rock that yields some pretty good climbing, and yes, the G is silent. We managed to struggle our way up a few problems before we shut the door on the final gym of the tour.
Nice. Come on, you got it. Come on. Yeah.
From Kelowna, we would eventually head east, again, continuing in the direction of home. However, there was one spot we just knew we had to stop off at en route. That place was Banff, Alberta. Lucky for us, our friends had carved out some time to tag along as well, so for the first time in our trip, we had another vehicle to join our convoy. Our drive east to Banff was eerily similar to our drive to Kelowna. Lots of snow, trucks pulled over with their flashers on, nerves on edge, and the volume cranked to 10 with some Motown classics. To continue with the rhythm that we'd set for the majority of this trip, we arrived in Banff at night. We pulled in with just enough time to squeeze a dip in a pool fed by hot springs. There was something amazing about the cool, crisp air, the warm water, and the slow, steady drifts of snow falling all at once. We stayed together in a rental in the town of Canmore, just outside Banff National Park. Staying here was a bit cheaper and worked out nicely, as it provided some perspectives we missed the night before as we rolled out of bed and into the mountains the next day. Our first stop was at Lake Louise. Whether you know it or not, you probably have seen beautiful photos of this place on your Instagram, and as of posting this video, we have one there now too. Unfortunately, when we arrived, the scenery was a little obscured. The lake was frozen and covered in a thick layer of snow, and the mountains were obfuscated by cloud cover. Although not optimal for the sprawling vista images that we pictured in our heads, it did give an awesome ambiance to the scene, emphasized further as the clouds began to part, revealing the blanketed giants. We have lightly mentioned the gear that we brought along this trip in other videos, and you might have taken note that we pretty much had 4 seasons worth of equipment. Yep, all that in our compact Toyota Matrix. Please sponsor us. While our sport climbing gear quite literally saw zero action, we weren't going to let our snow gear suffer the same fate. So we headed to the slopes to put our snowblades to good use. I grew up in a medium-sized family that would cram into a minivan to go skiing together. When we discovered snowblades, it was a no-brainer. No poles, required like a third of the amount of space, the illusion that we could suddenly be good at tricks. See you later, skis. These became a lot less popular when twin-tip skis became the norm, but as someone who doesn't ski all that often, these remained my staple ski slope companions over the years. So with limited space, I borrowed my brother's pair for Laura, and we found room for them in our roof carrier. We hadn't skied in years, Laura had never used snowblades, and the difference in balance showed. It didn't take long after 1 or 2 backflops for her to say, "F this goddamn bullshit," and calmly go rent a pair of skis. To which we enjoyed the rest of our times on the slopes and views unlike anything we have skiing back home.
Feel better? Let's do it. Let's make the best of this hour. We'll be able to only go up.
Let's make a mess.
Let's make a mess of this hour.
How's it going there, babe?
Ready to ski it up?
Yeah.
You're cool. Look at this guy.
We refueled after the day's activities at a restaurant nearby our accommodations.
What do you have to say for yourself?
I mean, Daniel is taking us out for dinner, and it feels like I've been walking for like 3 hours.
Yeah?
I'm not sure where he's taking us, but it better be good.
It's gonna be good. Look how fast they're walking. It's gonna be good.
Wherever we're going. Maybe it's the Bow Valley Motel he's taking us.
Grizzly paw. Do it.
Our feast may or may not have included some lively libations, which resulted in whatever the hell this was.
Yeah! Your turn.
This being our buddy named Pepe. He seemed pretty stoked about whatever we were doing to his tongue. We later upgraded to the slightly more grown-up, or at least over the age of 5, slide.
What do you think? Yeah! Yes. Woo! He gets in there, right? Yeah, he's cruising. Go! Do it!
He's going. It's ride or die. That wasn't bad. That was good. That was good. Daniel wins.
His is twice as big.
Daniel wins. Now this is never gonna end. Better. His is still bigger. That was pretty good. That was okay. That was all right. Oh, now it's the distance test. Team Braden.
We eventually started developing some techniques to see how far we could launch ourselves, and it got a bit competitive. I think Daniel won, although I'm pretty sure, he cheated.
Oh, that one was good. That was good. That was like to this line. Oh no, he turned. You turned. Oh, he didn't keep his form. Oh.
Honestly, we had way more fun here than we would like to admit.
I don't know, I think Daniel...
The next morning, depressed, we set off for the final push home and say goodbye to our friends and the West. We had no time for any scenic stops, but we did make sure to get some footage of our drive through Saskatchewan. This province gets a bad rap on account of it being so flat. I even contributed to that stigma when I made reference to it in the video through the Midwest of the US. However, it was actually quite beautiful, although, again, consistent. This drive ended up being a bit more eventful than we had anticipated for not so great reasons. Somewhere shortly after passing the Alberta border into the Saskatchewan drive, we almost died. And I mean that with minimal exaggeration. We thought we had put the most treacherous driving behind us as we exited the Rockies, but the single bi-directional lanes of rural highways had their own terrors in the form of transport trucks. At one point, around a gradual curve in the road, a truck going the other direction merged into our lane to pass what seemed to be at least 3 or 4 vehicles, including another truck. Because it was a curve, it was hard to tell at first if he was in our lane, but as he passed the other vehicles, it became extremely obvious that he was heading straight for us. Our first thoughts were that he would slow down and re-emerge at the same position he maneuvered out from, or maybe find some space to squeeze between one of the other vehicles, but no dice. This guy didn't give a shit if he was going to kill us. With minimal time to make a logical decision, I slammed on the brakes, swerved off the road, skidding down and maybe even getting some air into a ditch on the shoulder of the road. I could have maybe counted to 5 or so before the truck passed the exact spot where we just were. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of this because I think it would be a useful PSA. It wasn't that long after our road trip that a bus full of kids suffered a similar fate to the one we escaped on a stretch of highway not all that far from where we were. From this point on, we were hyper aware of our surroundings and paid careful attention to what the transport trucks were doing. They had schedules to keep, and they drove as such. Sadly, there were other moments on these rural roads where we saw similar behavior. Definitely not a great way to head into the night as we continued to try to drive home in a single push. In the early morning hours, we crossed back into the States through North Dakota to carry on the most direct path home. We continued through the night and the next day doing our 4-hour driving shifts that we had established throughout the trip. Our shifts started to get shorter and shorter as we started to feel the weight of our monotonous drive. We stopped for a short period for about 3 hours midday to nap near Minneapolis before continuing and reaching the Ambassador Bridge that we would cross back into Canada again. When something very odd happened. We got stopped as we started up the bridge, past the toll and custom booth. At first we thought this was Canadian Border Services, as the logic would seem to suggest that they wanted to check us out to make sure we weren't bringing anything back across the border that we shouldn't. Although in hindsight, it would have been odd to not just do this at the Canadian Customs booth. As they pulled our vehicle over, removed us from it, and started searching it, we realized that they were actually American. It just seemed very odd that they would be searching our car leaving the country rather than entering. I didn't want to seem like I was being a problem, so as politely as possible, I asked why they were searching us leaving, and they responded with, "We need to be just as careful about what's leaving as what's coming." Which to this day, I'm not quite sure I understand. Just a very weird experience as we were anxious to get home and sleep in our own bed, worried about having to repack our car on an open bridge. We were cleared after that and left to continue home, and to be fair to the officers, they were pleasant to talk to as we froze our butts off because it was nearing the end of November. So, a bit of a low note, but that was where the footage ends from the trip. So there it was, our 3-week car camping and road trip in our Toyota Matrix. Or as we decided to dub it, living in the Matrix. From Ontario to Michigan to Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Oregon, Washington State, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and finally the rest of the way home, that was our epic road trip. This is going to sound cheesy, but in many ways it changed us. It gave us a lot of time to reflect on what matters to us, it gave us a chance to see more of the world around us, and it gave us a little taste of adventure that we'd been longing for. The trip was kind of like an appetizer sampler at a restaurant. We got to try a little sample of everything and decide where we wanted to return to, which unfortunately was kind of everywhere, but especially Colorado, which we ended up doing just that a year ago, September. But we will save that for another video. Oh, and some of you might wonder if we still have our Matrix kicking around. Well, shortly after returning from our trip, this happened.
Oh shit, what's gonna happen? Ooh-wee! This car's a beast!
And since then, we have definitely put over 100,000 more kilometers on her. But unfortunately, the odometer stops counting at 299,999, so we don't know the exact total. Anyhow, she might be a bit worse for wear, but she's still kicking, and yeah, these cars are reliable. Thanks for coming along with us on our journey, and we hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please throw us a thumbs up. Hopefully the next one is just around the corner, and if you don't want to miss that, also feel free to subscribe. Alright, take it easy.